I'm honored to have you here, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, fellow enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Sinfonia Concertante for four winds. Thumb upright opening of the first movement, the Sinfonia Concertante for four winds in E-flat major, K-Erb An. C14.01 is a work thought to be by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart for oboe, clarinet, horn, bassoon, and orchestra. He originally wrote a work for flute, oboe, horn, bassoon, and orchestra, K.An. 9 in Paris in April 1778. This original work is lost. With the groundwork laid, let's now examine the lost Mozart Sinfonia Concertante and its connections to our previous discussions. In April 1778, Mozart wrote to his father from Paris about the Sinfonia Concertante he was writing for performance at the Concert Spiritual, naming the four virtuoso soloists who were to play. They were Johann Wendling flute, Friedrich Ramm oboe, Giovanni Punto horn, and Georg Wenzel Ritter bassoon. Mozart knew the three woodwind players from a previous visit to Mannheim. He wrote that the four soloists were in love with the work and that Joseph Legros, the Concert Spiritual director, had kept the score to have it copied. However, at the last minute, Mozart's piece was displaced from the concert program by a piece for similar forces by Giuseppe Cambini, and the Mozart work was never played. From this point, the original Mozart work became lost. Prepare yourself for an in-depth analysis of the Sinfonia Concertante as it is played today in this section. The work as it is performed today came to light in 1869 as an anonymous copy manuscript in the collection of Otto Jahn. Jahn wrote the first scholarly biography of W.A. Mozart and had amassed a large quantity of Mozart letters, original manuscripts, and score copies. These he made available to Chell to assist with the creation of the Chell catalogue of Mozart's work. There is considerable debate about the relation of this work as it is performed today to the lost original work, in part because the Jahn score has a somewhat different lineup of soloists from the lost Mozart work, but also because it contains errors both of copying and composition. Now, we shift our focus to instrumentation, a topic that deserves our attention. The Sinfonia Concertante is scored for solo oboe, solo clarinet, solo horn, solo bassoon, and an orchestra of two horns, two oboes, and strings. A typical performance lasts about 28 minutes. As we progress, let's zoom in on movements and examine its role in shaping our overall narrative. The work consists of three movements. 1. Allegro, in common time. This movement is in sonata form with three expositions rather than to one played by the orchestra, the other two by the soloists. It contains a written cadenza before the coda. 2. Adagio in common time, with gentle exchanges of thematic material. 3. Andante con variazioni, a theme with 10 variations and a coda. Each variation is separated by identical, basically decorative orchestral ritornelli. This movement is in time until the end of the last variation, where 6 adagio bars in common time led to a coda in time. Brace yourself for a deep dive into authenticity as we explore its impact and relevance in our evolving narrative. Mozart is known through letters and concert announcements to have written a Sinfonia Concertante for flute, oboe, horn, and bassoon, the original score of which is lost. There is considerable debate about the authenticity of what is performed today, and whether the extant piece is even related to the original work. Various scholars have conflicting opinions, and some say the composition is currently in a corrupt form. Initially, the Sinfonia Concertante seems to have been accepted uncritically as a slightly different version of Mozart's lost work. However, in the as Donald Tovey described it as blundering and inept. Alfred Einstein, however, considered it genuine. He considered the work to be an arrangement which retained the essential nature of the original, and he identified a recurring Mozartian motto in the slow movement. Stanley Sadie was dismissive, in particular noting that the solo clarinet cannot be directly back transcribed to a supposed oboe part. Martin Stahelen considered that it was inconceivable that Mozart wrote a homitonal concerto, i.e. with all three movements in the same key, here E-flat major. No other attested Mozart concerto is homitonal, though several of his symphonies and divertimenti are. Sadi thought that a sufficient reason for the homitonal character of the work might be to avoid a natural horn crook change and retune between movements. Stay-Helen has written a book about the work which argues that it cannot be by Mozart. The Mozart project considers this piece as spurious or doubtful, and it does not appear on the project's listing of concertos. Robert Levin analyzed the Sinfonia Concertante and compared the structure of the work with known Mozart concertos. From this analysis he concluded that while the orchestral part and the first movement cadenza were spurious, the soloists' roles were based on the Mozart originals but had been modified by an unknown hand to substitute a clarinet for the oboe part and to change the flute for an oboe. This transcription process would have required the music for the three woodwind instruments to have been redistributed to accommodate the substitution of the clarinet for the original oboe part. Levin theorized that the unknown arranger had only the four original Mozart solo parts for reference, so had composed the orchestral parts and cadenzas afresh. Levin wrote a book about the work and then went on to make a reconstruction of the supposed original Mozart work based on his research. Levin's reconstruction was recorded by the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields under Nedel Meriner. Mozart displayed affection and prominence for the wind instruments in his operas and concertos. Noteworthy wind passages are in the 15th and 17th piano concertos, with memorable dialogues with the soloist, flute, oboe and bassoon. In opera there are many arias with similar woodwind and French horn passages, such as Fiedelege's Per Piet, Ben mio, Paterna from Cus fan tut. The aria Sei il Padre Perdi from Idomeno uses the same for wind instruments as the Lost Paris work, is in E-flat and was written for the same Mannheim soloists. A passage from the Mozart Oboe Quartet first movement bars 85, 87 and 88, 90 appears to quote the Sinfonia Concertante. Both works were written for the same player Friedrich Ramm. The Sinfonia Concertante remains popular today and is regularly performed. I love hearing from you, so leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments.